Right, we're here at the substation still, going over the 34,500 volt side. You notice the cables are thicker on this side as opposed to the high voltage side, so probably doesn't make sense, right? You need the bigger cables over there. Well, no you don't. The lower voltage you go to, the higher the amperage. So what you have coming in at, say you're using 100 amps on the high side, I don't know the ratio off the top of my head, but you'll have actually, you know, 1,000 down here on the low side. The lower the voltage, the higher the amps. So that's why you have thicker cables on the lower side. That little transformer there, that's a station service transformer. That feeds power into that building there. They also have utility power as another backup. And if you notice on the other bay, they've got one down there as well. So they've got 3 sources of power if needed. Plus, if you see that junction box outside there by the door on the right, or right of the door, and the door's on the left, that's for hooking up a generator. So you can potentially have 4 different power sources here. So it goes through a switch, same as that big one, but doesn't need to be as big because the voltage isn't as high. And these here are PTs. Remember the PTs we talked about that were on the other side? Because this is a lower voltage, they don't need to be as big. So the ratio isn't as big, so the transformers aren't as large. But they're basically transformers, but we call them PTs, potential transformers. So that's there again, goes to the junction box and goes inside, and that's how we monitor what the voltage is. Again, it's probably the 69 and 115 volts again, so at 34,500 volts, you're going to read 115 volts down here, and say if it goes to 30,000 volts, you probably only read 100 volts down here. So that's how they monitor the voltage. Then it splits off into this bay, call it a low side bay, and it's called the low side bay because it's on the lower side of the voltage of the substation. And this is a bay, and this substation consists of 4 breakers, 4 low side breakers. These are just like the breakers in your house, just a little bit bigger. So power comes from the transformer through the switch, then it'll go through this other switch, through the breaker, then out the other side of the breaker when the breaker's closed. And that feeds this bay, this particular bay, and this particular bay here is for the capacitor banks. So it feeds these underground cables, and it goes over to this slab here, and the slab is where the capacitor bank will be. I think it's a dynamic capacitor bank, it's fully enclosed. And you need those to keep the correct power factor that the utility wants, because when these turbines speed up and slow down, you need that capacitance to regulate the voltage. You don't want it to drag anything down. I think that this particular utility wants a lead and lag no greater than 0.95. 1 is unity power factor, and so they don't want you to go, or 100, and they don't want you to go 5% more either way, which would be the 0.95 lead and lag. But you can save that for another video. So let's walk over here to the other bay that's energized. I'll show you what that looks like. So we'll just use this first bay as an example. Power comes from the transformer through the low side main switch across to the bus, and then it comes through another air switch to this breaker, and this breaker is closed, so everything's running through it. Sorry for the reflection, but closed, and again it's charged just like the other one, so you know it's able to trip out and reclose if it needs to. Then once it goes through the breaker, it comes back up to the bus, over to these other switches, and then to the underground cable. So this particular breaker is feeding 2 circuits, which is why you have 2 sets of 3 underground cable. And they each have their own switch, so you can operate one circuit and the other, or the other. And then they go through the conduits outside the substation, and that's all ran underground into the field, or to the wind turbines. What else is here? Those little tabs that are sticking out to the right on each of those paddles, that's for grounding, so you can put your ground cluster on there. So when you're working on it, it can be grounded and you'll be safe from any potential. So if somebody closes the switch, it's looking closed right now, but if it was open and you're working on it and somebody goes to close it accidentally when you're on it, it'll hit the ground and it'll bleed that voltage to ground and trip the breaker before that voltage gets to you. As long as you're not in between the grounds, but you're not here in this case. The white things on there are called fault indicators. If there is a fault or a short of some kind, the particular cable will turn, that device on the cable will turn red. So if you have a trip, you can come out here and you can see if it's on the red, white, or blue, and that'll tell you if it's basically A, B, or C phase, and you can go follow it out to the field from there. And there's multiple ones of these throughout the transformers. So it just makes it easier to locate your faults. So, and then they have a tie switch here in the middle of the 2 bays, and what that allows you to do is, say one transformer is down for maintenance or has issues. Say the breaker has issues on one bay, you can close that switch and you can feed power through and over to the other bay, and then through this transformer. So it's basically to keep things online if you have any maintenance issues. But the one limitation to that is the MVA of the transformer. This doesn't mean that you can put all the power from this bay and add it to this transformer. You can't do that. That would overload and overheat the transformer. So, but you can, say if you have a couple turbines down on this string and you have some room left in this transformer, then you could feed through this tie switch and basically get as much money as you can and keep as many turbines running as you can if you have any type of maintenance issue on one transformer or the other transformer or things like that. So that's really about it. We're just doing some VLF testing, which I'll talk about here in another video.